A child's voice on 911. Daddy said it was love. The truth was heartbreaking. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The old rotary phone in Martha Wilson's kitchen rarely rang these days. At 68, she had grown accustomed to the quiet of her small cottage on the outskirts of Pine Hollow, Georgia. The autumn afternoon light filtered through lace curtains she'd made herself, casting delicate shadows across the faded linoleum. Martha placed a single candle on the store-bought cupcake before her, another birthday alone. She glanced at the wall where dozens of envelopes hung from a string, all the letters she'd sent to her granddaughter Emily over the past 3 years. All returned unopened, each one stamped with angry red letters. Returned to sender. Well, Martha whispered to herself, at least I tried. She struck a match and lit the candle, its small flame dancing in the stillness. No one would sing to her today, but she still made a wish, the same one she'd made for years now. Please let me see my Emily again. 10 miles away, at the Emergency Response Center, Officer Thomas Ryder adjusted his headset and took another call in his shift. 911, what's your emergency? He asked in his deep professional voice. My name is Emily, came the soft reply. The voice couldn't have belonged to anyone older than 6 or 7. I don't know if this is emergency, but Daddy said it was love. Ryder furrowed his brow, immediately alert. What was love, sweetheart? There was a strange rustling sound in the background. The child's breathing seemed labored, and there was an odd tapping, rhythmic, persistent. It hurts sometimes, but Daddy said that's what love is, the little girl continued. Being strong when it hurts. A chill ran down the officer's spine. He signaled to his supervisor while keeping his voice calm. Emily, is your daddy there with you now? No, he's sleeping. He sleeps a lot now. Ryder began typing rapidly, signaling a code for potential child at risk. Can you tell me where you live, Emily? The blue house with the broken mailbox by the big tree. A pause. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble at all. You're being very brave. Can you stay on the phone with me? 20 minutes later, Emily's call had been escalated beyond local police. Special Agent David Ramirez of the FBI examined the preliminary report on his laptop. The case initially seemed routine, but something in the call transcript triggered an alert. This wasn't the first child in that region to call with similar words in the past 2 years. Do we have an address? He asked the local detective. Only partial. We're cross-referencing now. There's a Martha Wilson who might be the maternal grandmother, lives alone a few miles away. Meanwhile, Martha blew out her candle, unaware that her wish was about to come true in unexpected ways. The phone rang, startling her. So badly she nearly knocked over her teacup. Hello? Mrs. Wilson, Martha Wilson? The voice was formal, professional. Yes, speaking. This is Special Agent Ramirez from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It's about your granddaughter, Emily. Martha's heart seemed to stop. 3 years of silence, of wondering if Emily even remembered her. 3 years of returned letters and unanswered prayers. The FBI? Is she? Martha couldn't finish the question. She's physically safe, Mrs. Wilson, but we need to speak with you immediately. How soon can you come to the regional office in Augusta? Martha's gaze drifted to the yellowed photograph on her refrigerator. Her daughter smiling, holding newborn Emily, the last happy memory before everything fell apart. I'll be there in an hour, she said, already reaching for her cardigan and purse, birthday cupcake forgotten. As Martha locked her front door, she had no way of knowing that an innocent call from Emily had initiated an investigation that would uncover long-kept secrets and perhaps finally bring her granddaughter back into her life. Martha's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she drove the 40 minutes to Augusta, the FBI. What could Emily possibly have said that would involve federal agents? Her mind raced with possibilities, each more concerning than the last. The federal building loomed ahead, all steel and glass. Martha smoothed her faded cardigan and checked her reflection in the rear view mirror. The lines around her eyes had deepened since she'd last seen Emily. Would her granddaughter even recognize her now? Mrs. Wilson? A tall man in a crisp suit approached as she entered the lobby. I'm Special Agent Ramirez. Thank you for coming so quickly. Martha nodded, her throat tight. Where is she? Emily? She's not here, ma'am. She's safe, but we need to talk first. He gestured toward a corridor. This way, please. The interview room was small but not uncomfortable. Martha perched on the edge of her chair, clutching her worn leather purse. Beside Agent Ramirez sat a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Bennett, a child psychologist. Mrs. Wilson, when was the last time you saw your granddaughter? Ramirez asked, his pen poised above a notepad. 3 years and 4 months ago, Martha replied without hesitation. At my daughter Caroline's funeral. The agents exchanged glances. And why haven't you seen Emily since then? Martha's eyes dropped to her hands. The gold wedding band she still wore after 15 years as a widow caught the fluorescent light. My son-in-law, Robert. He blamed me for Caroline's passing. Said I should have noticed she was struggling. He took Emily and moved away. I've tried to maintain contact, sent letters, birthday cards, Christmas gifts, but they always come back unopened. Today, Emily called 911, Ramirez said carefully, sliding a transcript across the table. I'd like you to read what she said. Martha read the paper, her hand covering her mouth. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Oh, Emily. Mrs. Wilson, do you have any idea what Emily might be referring to when she says, Daddy said it was love? Martha shook her head slowly. Robert was always particular. After Caroline died, he became even more withdrawn. But he loved Emily. I never thought he would. She couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Bennett leaned forward. We believe Emily may be suffering from a medical condition that hasn't been properly treated. The hurting she mentions could be physical discomfort from that. What condition? Martha asked, alarmed. We're still investigating, Ramirez interjected. What we need now is your help in locating them. Our records show Robert Campbell changed addresses several times in the past years. Martha blinked. I wouldn't know. Like I said, he cut all contact. Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Bennett said gently, if we locate Emily and find that her home situation is challenging, would you be in a position to help? Perhaps even provide temporary care? The question struck Martha like a bolt of lightning. Her modest home, her limited income, her age, all flashed through. Her mind as potential obstacles. But above all those concerns was a single thought. Emily needed her. Yes, she said firmly. Whatever she needs. Ramirez nodded. There's something else you should know. This isn't the first call like this we've received. There's a pattern emerging of children being isolated, medical care being withheld. A knock on the door interrupted him. Another agent entered and whispered something in Ramirez's ear. His expression shifted. We've located them, he announced, standing abruptly. Mrs. Wilson, I need you to stay here with Dr. Bennett. We're heading there now. But I could help, Martha protested, rising. Emily knows me. It's a delicate situation, Ramirez said firmly. We'll contact you as soon as we can. As the door closed behind him, Martha sank back into her chair, feeling more helpless than ever. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking each second that separated her from the granddaughter she'd been longing to see for 3 years. Dr. Bennett offered a sympathetic smile. This waiting is the hardest part. Tell me about Emily. What was she like when you knew her? Martha closed her eyes, picturing the 3-year-old with Caroline's eyes and dimples. She loved stories. I used to read to her for hours, and butterflies, she'd chase them around my garden. As Martha spoke, her resolve strengthened. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't let Emily slip away again. This time she would fight for her family. The clock had ticked past midnight when Agent Ramirez finally returned. Martha, who had been dozing in an uncomfortable chair, jerked awake at the sound of the door opening. Did you find her? Is Emily all right? She asked, her voice hoarse from worry. Ramirez looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than before. We found her, Mrs. Wilson. Emily is physically safe, but the situation was concerning. She's been taken to Augusta Children's Hospital for evaluation. Martha was already gathering her purse. I need to see her. There's something you should understand first, Ramirez said, gesturing for her to sit back down. Emily's father has been temporarily detained for questioning. The home conditions weren't appropriate for a child, and Emily shows signs of medical neglect. What kind of neglect? Martha's heart raced. She has a severe skin condition that hasn't been treated properly. It's causing her significant discomfort. The doctors are treating her now, but take me to her, Martha interrupted, a newfound firmness in her voice. Please. The hospital corridor seemed endless. Martha's sensible shoes squeaked against the polished floor as she followed Ramirez and a social worker named Michael Barnes, a kind-faced man with salt and pepper hair who had been waiting for them in the lobby. Mrs. Wilson, Barnes said gently as they walked, Emily hasn't mentioned you to us. It's possible she may not remember you clearly, given her young age when you last saw her. We need to proceed carefully. Martha nodded, trying to swallow the lump in her throat. I understand. They stopped outside a room with a cheerful mural of forest animals painted on the door. Through the small window, Martha caught a glimpse of a small figure in the bed, surrounded by stuffed animals that the hospital staff had provided. Emily is sleeping now, the nurse at the station informed them. The medication for her eczema makes her drowsy. Eczema? Martha questioned. That's the condition? Barnes nodded. Severe atopic dermatitis. Without proper treatment, it can become extremely painful. The scratching was what you heard in the 911 call, that tapping sound. Martha's hand flew to her mouth. Caroline had eczema as a child too. I knew exactly how to treat it. The special baths, the wrapping. If only Robert had let me help. A new voice interrupted them. Mrs. Wilson. Won't be seeing the child tonight. Or any night, for that matter. Martha turned to see a sharply dressed woman approaching, her high heels clicking authoritatively on the floor. She thrust a business card toward them. Lynette Waters, Child Protective Services. I've been assigned to Emily. Campbell's case. I'm her grandmother, Martha said, drawing herself up to her full height, though she still had to look up at the younger woman. Yes, the grandmother who's been absent for 3 years. Waters replied coolly. I wasn't absent by choice, Martha protested. Robert cut me off, and you made how many legal attempts to maintain visitation? Waters raised an eyebrow. Our records don't show any court filings for grandparents' rights. Martha flinched. The truth was, on her fixed income, legal action had seemed impossible. Her silence was answer enough for Waters. As I suspected, the caseworker continued. Emily will remain in protective custody while we assess the situation. We'll be looking for an appropriate foster placement tomorrow. But I'm right here, Martha said, her voice breaking. I'm family. Waters gave her an appraising look. Mrs. Wilson. You're... She paused, clearly searching for a diplomatic word. Older. You live alone in a rural area. Do you even have a bedroom for a child? The financial resources to care for one with medical needs? We have to consider Emily's best interests. Before Martha could respond, a small voice called out from the room behind them. Nurse, can I have some water? Everyone turned. Through the window, Martha could see that Emily was awake, sitting up in bed. Her dark hair was tangled around her thin face, and even from a distance, Martha could see the angry red patches on her arms where she'd been scratching. Their eyes met through the glass, and for a moment Martha thought she saw a flicker of recognition in the child's gaze. Then Emily looked away, suddenly shy. I'll see to her, the nurse said, moving toward the door. Wait, Martha called out, her voice stronger than she expected. She turned to Barnes. Mr. Barnes, I may not have a perfect situation, but I love that child, and I will do whatever it takes. Move closer to town. Child-proof my home, work with doctors, anything. But please don't let her go to strangers when she has family who loves her. Barnes and Ramirez exchanged glances, and Martha saw the first glimmer of support in their eyes. This isn't your decision to make, Waters reminded them sharply. The court will determine appropriate placement. Then I'll be at that hearing, Martha replied, her chin lifting. And every hearing after that? Until Emily comes home where she belongs. As she turned to leave, Martha caught one last glimpse of Emily through the window. The little girl was watching her now, curious and perhaps just a little hopeful. The following morning found Martha back at the hospital, determined to see Emily. She had spent a sleepless night researching grandparents' rights on the ancient computer at the Pine Hollow Public Library and making lists of everything she would need to prepare her home for a child. The hospital lobby bustled with activity as Martha approached the reception desk, a small gift bag clutched in her hand. "I'm here to see Emily Campbell," she said to the receptionist. "I'm her grandmother." The young woman consulted her computer. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Emily Campbell isn't cleared for visitors outside of authorized personnel." Martha's heart sank. "But I spoke with Agent Ramirez and Mr. Barnes last night. Surely they—" "Martha?" A familiar voice called from behind her. She turned to see Michael Barnes approaching, his kind face looking tired but welcoming. "I was hoping you'd come back. Walk with me?" They moved to a quieter corner of the lobby. "I've been advocating for you," Barnes explained. "But Ms. Waters is persistent. She's already identified a potential foster placement." "But I'm Emily's family," Martha protested. "Which is why I've arranged something." Barnes smiled conspiratorially. "Emily's doctor is conducting an evaluation in 30 minutes. As her potential caregiver, you should be present to learn about her medical needs. Purely educational, of course." Martha's eyes widened in understanding. "Of course. Educational. Room 215, pediatric wing. I'll meet you there." The pediatric floor was decorated with colorful murals of sea creatures. Martha found the right room and hesitated outside, smoothing her hair and straightening her cardigan. Through the window, she could see Emily sitting on the examination table, swinging her legs as a doctor gently examined the red patches on her arms. Barnes arrived and nodded encouragingly. "Ready?" Martha took a deep breath and followed him inside. "Emily, this is Mrs. Wilson," Barnes said gently. "She's here to learn about how to take care of eczema." Emily looked up, studying Martha with curious eyes so like Caroline's that Martha felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Hello, Emily," Martha said softly. "Hi," the little girl replied shyly, then returned her attention to the doctor. "The good news," the doctor was saying, "is that with proper treatment, we can get this under control. Emily needs these special baths, then medication applied afterward, and soft cotton wraps for nighttime." Martha nodded. "My daughter had the same condition. I used to wrap her arms in clean cotton strips soaked in soothing lotion. It helped her sleep." The doctor looked impressed. "Exactly right. That's precisely what Emily needs." "My mommy had itchy arms too?" Emily asked suddenly, looking up at Martha with new interest. Martha smiled gently. "Yes, sweetheart. Your mommy was my little girl, and she had the same itchy spots you have." A flicker of recognition crossed Emily's face. I remember you. You had a garden with butterflies?" Martha's heart leapt. "That's right. You used to chase them around my garden when you were very little." As the doctor continued explaining Emily's treatment plan, Martha cautiously moved closer, eventually sitting on a chair beside the examination table. Emily didn't pull away. "I brought you something," Martha said when the doctor stepped out to retrieve some pamphlets. She handed Emily the small gift bag. Emily peeked inside and pulled out a worn book of fairy tales with colorful illustrations. "Pretty," she said, running her fingers over the cover. "It was your mother's favorite when she was your age," Martha explained. "I used to read it to her every night, and then when you were little, I read it to you too." Emily opened the book carefully, as if it were a precious treasure. A folded paper fell out, one of the many letters Martha had written over the years. "I wrote you letters," Martha said quietly. "Many letters. I wanted you to know I was thinking about you all the time." Emily looked confused. Daddy said we didn't have any family left after Mommy went to heaven. Before Martha could respond, the door opened and Lynette Waters entered, her expression thunderous. What is this? You weren't authorized for visitation, Mrs. Wilson. Ms. Waters, Barnes began. I invited Mrs. Wilson to learn about Emily's medical needs, considering her experience. This is completely inappropriate, Waters interrupted. You've overstepped your authority, Mr. Barnes. Emily shrank back on the examination table, her small hands clutching the book tightly. Please don't fight, she whispered, her eyes wide with worry. Martha immediately softened her stance. It's all right, sweetheart. No one's fighting. She turned to Waters. I'll go, but Emily should keep the book. It was her mother's. Waters hesitated, then gave a curt nod. As Martha reluctantly moved toward the door, Emily called out, Will you come back? Martha turned, tears pricking her eyes. Yes, sweetheart, as soon as they let me. Outside in the corridor, Barnes caught up with Martha. Don't give up, he said quietly. The preliminary hearing is tomorrow, and there's something else you should know. Emily had those letters you sent, all of them hidden under her mattress at home. She couldn't read them yet, but she kept them safe. For the first time since receiving that fateful call, Martha felt a spark of real hope. Her letters had reached Emily after all, and maybe, just maybe, her love had too. The county courthouse loomed before Martha like a mountain she had to climb. She clutched her handbag tightly, reviewing the mental checklist she'd prepared for the preliminary hearing. Inside was every document she could gather to prove she was capable of caring for Emily. Her home ownership papers, bank statements, modest though they were, and a letter from her doctor confirming her good health despite her advancing years, as he had tactfully phrased it. Mrs. Wilson, Michael Barnes waved from the courthouse steps. I was hoping to catch you before we went in. Martha hurried over, grateful for a friendly face. Do you think they'll listen to me today? Will Emily be there? Barnes shook his head. Children don't usually attend these preliminary hearings, and I should warn you, Robert Campbell has been released on his own recognizance. He'll be here today. Martha's stomach tightened. She hadn't seen her son-in-law since Caroline's funeral, where he'd blamed her for not seeing the signs of Caroline's illness sooner. The memory of his cold eyes and accusing finger still haunted her. I'll be fine, she assured Barnes, though her voice wavered slightly. Inside, the family court was less intimidating than Martha had imagined, more like a conference room than the dramatic courtrooms she'd seen on television. Judge Eleanor Simmons, a stern-looking woman with silver-streaked hair, presided. From the head of a large table, Martha took her assigned seat, then nearly gasped when Robert entered. 3 years had changed him dramatically. Once robust and energetic, he now looked gaunt, with dark shadows under his eyes. He didn't acknowledge Martha, keeping his gaze fixed on the table. This is a preliminary hearing regarding the temporary custody of Emily Campbell, age 6, Judge Simmons began. I understand there are concerns about the child's living conditions and medical care. Agent Ramirez presented the findings from their investigation. Emily's untreated eczema, the cluttered condition of the home, and Robert's failure to seek proper medical attention. As photographs of Emily's inflamed skin were displayed, Martha had to blink back tears. Mr. Campbell, would you like to respond to these allegations? The judge asked. Robert finally spoke, his voice quiet but defensive. I did the best I could. Do you know how expensive those creams and medicines are without insurance? I lost my job when the factory closed last year. I've been picking up odd jobs, but it's barely enough for rent and food. Martha hadn't known about the factory closing. She looked at Robert with new understanding. He'd been struggling to survive, just as she had on her fixed income. And why didn't you seek assistance programs? The judge pressed. Pride, I guess, Robert admitted. And he hesitated. I didn't want them asking questions about Emily's mother, about how she died. A heavy silence fell over the room. Martha's heart raced. What about Caroline's death was Robert trying to hide? Before the judge could inquire further, Lynette Waters interjected. Your Honor, we've identified a suitable foster placement for Emily while Mr. Campbell addresses these issues. The Morgans are experienced foster parents with medical backgrounds who can properly manage Emily's condition. No, Martha said, louder than she intended. All eyes turned to her. Excuse me, Your Honor, but Emily has family who can care for her. Me, I'm her grandmother, and I've been trying to be part of her life for 3 years. Mrs. Wilson, Judge Simmons addressed her directly, while blood relation is certainly a factor, we must consider Emily's best interests. You live quite far from Emily's school doctor and support services. I can move closer, Martha said quickly. I've already looked. Into apartments in Augusta. Robert scoffed. You can barely take care of yourself, Martha. How would you handle a 6-year-old? I raised Caroline just fine on my own after my husband died, Martha replied, trying to keep her voice steady. And I know exactly how to treat Emily's condition. I did it for her mother for years. Yet you failed to notice when Caroline was spiraling, Robert shot back bitterly. Some mother you were. That's enough, Judge Simmons interrupted. This hearing is about Emily, not past grievances. A court-appointed psychologist spoke next, explaining that Emily needed stability and consistent care. While Mrs. Wilson clearly loves her granddaughter, we must consider her age, rural location, and limited resources. The Morgans can provide immediate stability and proper medical attention. Martha felt the room closing in around her. They saw her only as an old woman with a small pension and a cottage too far from town. Not as the grandmother who had sent a letter every week for 3 years, who still kept Caroline's childhood books carefully preserved, who could soothe Emily's itchy skin with the same gentle hands that had once soothed her mother's. When the judge announced that Emily would remain in emergency foster care with the Morgans pending a full hearing in 30 days, Martha felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. You'll be granted supervised visitation twice weekly, the judge added, offering a small consolation. Outside the courtroom, Martha leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. Robert passed by without a glance, shoulders hunched against an invisible weight. This isn't over, Barnes said, appearing beside her. You have 30 days to prove you're the best placement for Emily. How? Martha asked, voice barely above a whisper. They've already decided I'm too old, too poor, too far away. Then we change their minds, Barnes replied firmly. Starting with your first visitation tomorrow. Show them who Martha Wilson really is. As Martha walked to the bus stop, her mind whirled with questions. What had Robert meant about Caroline's death? What was he hiding? And how could she possibly overcome the mountain of obstacles between her and Emily in just 30 days? The Family Resource Center was housed in a cheerful building painted in bright blues and yellows. Martha arrived, 30 minutes early for her first supervised visit with Emily, her arms laden with carefully selected items. The fairy tale book, of course, but also colored pencils, simple puzzles, and ingredients for making homemade Play-Doh, just as she used to do with Caroline. You've come prepared, observed Ms. Henderson, the visit supervisor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. But remember, we're just observing how you interact. No need to impress us with activities. Martha nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. I just want Emily to be comfortable. They led her to a room, designed to look like a living area, with a small table, comfortable chairs, and shelves of toys. Martha began arranging her items on the table, hands trembling slightly. The door opened, and Emily entered, looking healthier than she had at the hospital. The angry red patches on her arms had faded to a milder pink, and her hair was neatly combed into 2 small braids. She wore a bright yellow dress that was slightly too large for her small frame. Hi, Emily said, hovering by the door. Hello, sweetheart, Martha replied, her voice warm but careful, not wanting to overwhelm the child. I'm so glad to see you again. Emily approached slowly, eyes fixed on the items Martha had laid out. What's all this stuff? Well, I thought we might read some more from your mother's book, Martha explained. Or we could draw, or make some Play-Doh. Your mom used to love making Play-Doh when she was your age. Emily's eyes brightened. You can make Play-Doh? I thought it came from the store. Martha laughed. Oh no, homemade is much better. Want to try? Soon they were measuring salt and flour, Emily's small hands carefully pouring under Martha's guidance. The child's initial hesitation melted away as they worked, and when Martha showed her how to add a few drops of lavender oil to make it smell pretty, just like your mom liked, Emily's face lit up with delight. Did my mom really do this? Emily asked, kneading the soft dough. She did, and she was just about your age when she learned. How? Martha replied. You remind me so much of her. Emily considered this. Daddy doesn't talk about Mommy very much. It makes him too sad. Martha nodded, understanding. It can be hard to talk about people we miss, but I'd be happy to tell you stories about her anytime you want. As they worked, Martha gently asked about Emily's life, her school, her friends, her favorite things. The picture that emerged was one of isolation. Robert had moved them frequently. Emily had few friends, and her school attendance had been spotty. And how are things with the Morgans? Martha asked carefully, aware of Ms. Henderson's watchful presence. They're nice, Emily said with a small shrug. They have lots of rules about washing hands and bedtime and stuff. And Mrs. Morgan checks my skin every morning and night. That's good, Martha encouraged. Your skin looks much better already. Emily nodded, then leaned forward, lowering her voice to a whisper. But they don't read stories like you do, and they don't know about Mommy. Something protective surged in Martha's heart. She glanced at Ms. Henderson, who was making notes on her clipboard, but seemed pleased with their interaction. Would you like me to bring some photos of your mother next time? Martha offered. I have lots of pictures from when she was your age. Emily nodded eagerly, then hesitated. But what if Daddy doesn't like it? Well, Martha said thoughtfully, these would just be for you to see during our visits. Special. Grandmother-granddaughter time. Emily seemed satisfied with this answer and returned to shaping the Play-Doh into small animals. By the end of the hour, they had created a menagerie of creatures, read 2 stories from the fairy tale book, and Emily had drawn a picture of herself and Martha in a garden with butterflies, a memory she claimed was fuzzy but real. When Ms. Henderson announced that their time was up, Emily's face fell. Can't we have a little longer? I'm afraid not, sweetie, Ms. Henderson said, but you'll see your grandmother again in a few days. To Martha's surprise, Emily threw her arms around her waist in a tight hug. Promise you'll bring the pictures. I promise, Martha whispered, blinking back tears as she returned the embrace. Ms. Henderson was smiling as she escorted Emily out. When she returned, her clipboard was full of notes. That went exceptionally well. Mrs. Wilson, I rarely see such natural rapport in first visits, especially after years of separation. Martha's heart soared. Does this mean? I'll be submitting a very positive report, Ms. Henderson confirmed, and I'll recommend increasing your visitation schedule. As Martha gathered her things, she felt a flutter of hope. Perhaps the authorities would see that blood and love were stronger than any temporary separation. Perhaps Emily would come home with her sooner than she'd dared to dream. She was nearly to the bus stop when her phone rang. The social worker, Michael Barnes. Martha, great news. The judge was impressed by Ms. Henderson's report from your visit today. They've scheduled a home evaluation for next week, and if you pass, they're considering granting you temporary custody while Robert completes a treatment program. Martha nearly dropped the phone. Really? Oh, thank goodness. Don't celebrate just yet, Barnes cautioned. But yes, this is a very positive development. The Morgans are wonderful people, but even they agree Emily should be with family if possible. As Martha boarded the bus home, she allowed herself, for the first time, to imagine Emily. In her cottage, planting flowers in the garden, sitting at the kitchen table for breakfast, sleeping in the small room that had once been Caroline's. She was so lost in these happy thoughts that she almost missed the next thing Barnes said. "Just one more thing, Martha. Robert is asking for a meeting. With you. Alone. He says there are things about Caroline you need to know." Martha chose the Pine Hollow Diner for her meeting with Robert, a neutral territory where the constant clatter of dishes and murmur of conversation would soften any potential confrontation. She arrived early, selecting a booth near the back where they could speak privately while still being in public view. Her hands fidgeted with the laminated menu, though she had no appetite. What could Robert possibly want to tell her about Caroline that she didn't already know? She had raised her daughter, loved her through every triumph and struggle. Yet the way Robert had spoken in court about what really happened haunted her. The bell above the door jingled and Robert stepped inside. He scanned the diner until he spotted Martha, then walked over with measured steps. He looked better than he had in court, clean-shaven. His clothes pressed, though still too large for his thin frame. "Martha," he said with a nod, sliding into the booth opposite her. "Robert," she replied, trying to keep her voice neutral. "You're looking well." "Mandatory therapy and regular meals will do that," he said with a hint of bitterness. "How's Emily?" "Doing better. Her skin is healing and she's starting to open up." Martha paused, then added, "She misses you." Something flickered across Robert's face, pain, perhaps, or guilt. "I miss her too." The waitress came for their orders. Martha asked for tea, Robert for coffee. An awkward silence settled between them until their drinks arrived. "You wanted to talk about Caroline," Martha finally said, unable to bear the tension any longer. Robert wrapped his hands around his coffee mug as if drawing warmth from it. "Yes, there are things you should know, things I probably should have told you years ago." Martha braced herself. "I'm listening." "Caroline was struggling more than anyone knew," Robert began, his voice low. "The doctors called it postpartum depression at first, after Emily was born. But it never really went away. It got worse. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. Other days she seemed fine." Martha's throat tightened. "I knew she had difficult days, but she always said she was managing." "She didn't want you to worry," Robert continued. "She was so determined to be the perfect mother, the perfect daughter. She hid how bad it was from everyone, even me. Sometimes." "But why didn't you reach out to me?" Martha asked, the question that had haunted her for years finally escaping. "I could have helped." Robert's gaze dropped to the table. "Because she made me promise not to. She was convinced you would think she was failing, just like—" He stopped. Abruptly. "Just like what, Robert?" "Just like you thought she failed at everything else," he finished quietly. "The college she never finished. The jobs she couldn't keep. The marriage that wasn't the fairy tale she wanted." The words hit Martha like physical blows. "I never thought she was a failure. I was proud of her, always." "That's not how she felt," Robert said, meeting her eyes now. "She felt she could never measure up to your expectations." Martha's mind raced through years of conversations with Caroline, searching for evidence to refute this claim. Had she been too critical? Too demanding? The possibility that her daughter had hidden her struggles out of fear of disappointing her was almost too painful to bear. The night it happened," Robert continued, his voice breaking slightly. "She had called you." Martha frowned. "No, she didn't. I would have. Remembered? She called your old number, the one you had before you changed it that spring. She left a message asking for help, but you never got it." Robert pulled out his phone, tapped a few buttons, then slid it across the table. "I saved it all these years. I think you should hear it." With trembling fingers, Martha picked up the phone and pressed play. Caroline's voice, tired, fragile, but unmistakably her daughter's, filled her ears. "Mom, it's me. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I'm not doing so well. The darkness is back, worse this time. Robert's working late again, and Emily's asleep, and I can't see my way through. I thought I could handle it on my own, be strong like you always are, but I can't. I need help, Mom. Please call me back." Tears streamed down Martha's face as the message ended. "I never got this. I never knew she called. When I changed my number, I told everyone, "Not us," Robert said flatly. "We hadn't spoken in months after that fight about Emily's birthday party. Remember? You said Caroline was spoiling her. Caroline was so hurt she didn't call to get your new number." Martha did remember. A stupid, petty disagreement that had somehow ballooned into weeks of silence. How could something so small have created such a devastating rift? "When I got home that night," Robert continued, his voice hollow, "it was too late. The ambulance came, but they couldn't save her. And then at the funeral, you acted like you had no idea she was suffering. I was so angry, I just wanted to get Emily away from all of it." "So you cut me out of her life completely?" Martha asked, her grief mingling with a fresh surge of indignation. "I thought I was protecting her," Robert admitted. "But I see now that I was wrong. I couldn't be everything she needed, especially after I lost my job. I tried, Martha, I really tried." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the diner. "Why are you telling me all this now?" Martha finally asked. Robert sighed deeply. "Because the court is considering giving you temporary custody, and you deserve to know the truth. And because," he hesitated, "because I'm not well either. The doctors say I have major depression. They're recommending a residential treatment program." Martha studied the man before her son-in-law, Emily's father, Caroline's husband. She saw not the villain she had constructed in her mind these past 3 years, but a broken man who had been carrying too many burdens alone. "How long would the program be?" she asked quietly. 3 months minimum." Robert looked up at her, his eyes showing vulnerability she'd never seen before. "Emily needs stability while I get help. She needs family." Martha reached across the table and, after a moment's hesitation, placed her hand over his. "Then we'll make sure she has it." As they parted ways outside the diner, Martha felt the weight of new knowledge settling on her shoulders. The past couldn't be changed, but perhaps the future still could. For Emily's sake and for Caroline's, she would try to forge a new understanding with Robert. She didn't notice the black sedan parked across the street, or Lynette Waters watching them through the window, her expression calculating as she made notes on her tablet. Martha couldn't sleep that night. Caroline's voice from the message played over and over in her mind. The windows of her cottage rattled as a storm swept through Pine Hollow, matching the turmoil in her heart. By dawn, she found herself sitting at her kitchen table, surrounded by old photo albums and Caroline's childhood mementos. Each image of her smiling daughter now carried new weight, new questions. Had she missed the signs? Had her own pride created the distance that kept Caroline from reaching out properly when she needed help the most? A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Through the window, she could see her elderly neighbor Clarence standing on her porch, holding a covered dish. "Thought you might need some breakfast," he said when she opened the door. "Saw your lights on all night." Martha hadn't realized her vigil had been so visible. "Come in," she offered. "I could use the company." Clarence settled at the table while Martha made coffee. At 82, he had been Martha's neighbor for decades, watching Caroline grow up from across the fence. "Heard about your granddaughter," he said, spooning the eggs he'd brought onto 2 plates. "Town's not that big. People talk." Martha nodded, too emotionally drained to be surprised. "I might get custody of her, temporarily at least." "That's good news, isn't it?" Clarence asked, studying her troubled expression. "It should be, but I just learned some things about Caroline that are hard to accept." Her voice caught. "I think I failed her, Clarence, and I'm terrified of failing Emily, too." Clarence was quiet for a moment, thoughtfully stirring his coffee. "You know, when my son Daniel moved out west, we didn't speak for 15 years. Martha looked up in surprise. Clarence never talked about his estranged son. "Pride's a terrible thing," he continued. "He wanted to live his life his way, and I was too stubborn to accept it. By the time I came around, I'd missed my grandchildren's entire childhood." "What changed?" Martha asked softly. "I got a letter saying Daniel was in the hospital. Heart attack at 47. Clarence's weathered face showed the memory's pain. Nearly lost him before I could make things right. But we got a second chance. Not everyone does. Martha felt tears welling up. Caroline didn't get a second chance. No, Clarence agreed gently. But you and Emily do. And maybe even that son-in-law of yours. His words hung in the air as Martha considered them. She'd been so focused on what she'd lost, Caroline, years with Emily, that she hadn't fully embraced what might still be gained. The past has a way of casting long shadows, Clarence said, rising to leave. But shadows can't exist without light somewhere. After he left, Martha walked through her small home with new eyes. The bedroom that had once been Caroline's would need a fresh coat of paint for Emily. The garden, overgrown in recent years, could bloom again with a child's help. The quiet cottage could be filled with voices and laughter once more. She picked up the phone and dialed Michael Barnes. "I need to make some changes," she said when he answered. "For Emily, and I think I'm going to need some help." The next week passed in a flurry of activity. Martha's cottage, once a shrine to the past, transformed day by day. The spare bedroom that had remained untouched since Caroline left for college now gleamed with fresh yellow paint. Neighbors Martha had barely spoken to in years appeared with offers of help. Clarence and his son Daniel, visiting from Colorado, fixed the wobbly porch steps. The women from Martha's old church group brought furniture suitable for a 6-year-old. Even the local librarian set aside children's books for Emily. "It really does take a village," Martha murmured, as she watched Daniel install a new guardrail on the back steps. Michael Barnes visited to conduct the preliminary home evaluation, his eyebrows rising in surprise as he walked through the cottage. "Impressive," he noted, checking items off his list. "You've been busy." "I had help," Martha admitted. "Turns out I wasn't as alone as I thought." She showed him the newly installed phone line with internet service, an expense she'd hesitated over, until Clarence pointed out it would allow Emily to research school projects and video chat with her father during his treatment. "Speaking of Robert," Barnes said carefully, "how did your meeting go?" Martha sighed, arranging Emily's stuffed animals on the freshly made bed. "Difficult but necessary. We're finding common ground. For Emily's sake." The sound of vehicles pulling up outside interrupted their conversation. Martha peered through the window to see Lynette Waters stepping out of her car, accompanied by an older woman in a business suit. "Judge Simmons?" Martha gasped. "What's she doing here? The official evaluation isn't scheduled until next week." Barnes looked equally surprised. "Unannounced visits aren't uncommon, but the judge herself rarely conducts them." Martha straightened, her cardigan suddenly conscious of the flour dusting her hands from the cookies she'd been baking. Too late to change now. She opened the door with her warmest smile. "Judge Simmons, Ms. Waters, what an unexpected pleasure. Won't you come in?" The judge entered first, her keen eyes taking in every detail of the modest but spotless living room. "Mrs. Wilson, hope you don't mind us dropping by. I like to see things as they really are, not just when people are expecting company." Martha's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. "Of course. I was just showing Mr. Barnes the changes we've made." "And baking cookies? Emily's mother's favorite recipe? Would you care for some tea?" The doorbell rang just as Martha was serving coffee to Judge Simmons. The interruption couldn't have come at a worse time. The judge was in the middle of questioning Martha about her financial preparations for raising Emily. "Excuse me," Martha apologized, setting down the coffee pot. When she opened the door, she was stunned to see a woman in her mid-30s with familiar eyes. Robert's eyes. "You must be Martha," the woman said. "I'm Catherine Campbell, Robert's sister." Martha blinked in surprise. "Robert never mentioned having a sister." "That doesn't surprise me," Catherine replied with a sad smile. "We haven't been close in years. May I come in? I have something important to discuss." Martha hesitated, glancing back at the judge and social workers sitting in her living room. "Actually, I'm in the, middle of a home evaluation for Emily's custody case." Catherine's eyes widened. Perfect timing then. That's exactly why I'm here. Before Martha could respond, Judge Simmons appeared behind her. Mrs. Wilson, is everything all right? Your Honor. Catherine stepped forward confidently. I'm Catherine Campbell, Emily's aunt. I've driven from Nashville to provide character testimony for my brother, and for Mrs. Wilson. The judge raised an eyebrow but nodded. Please join us, Ms. Campbell. This is certainly unexpected. As they settled back in the living room, Catherine pulled out a folder from her bag. I've been trying to reconnect with Robert for years, but he's kept his distance. When I finally tracked him down last month, I was shocked to learn about Emily's situation. You weren't in contact with your brother or niece? Lynette Waters asked skeptically. Not for lack of trying, Catherine explained. After Caroline died, Robert cut ties with everyone, including me. But I never stopped sending birthday cards and Christmas gifts to Emily. Martha's heart skipped. The presents I thought Robert was throwing away. Catherine turned to her with a gentle expression. I always signed them from Aunt Catherine and Grandma Martha. I wanted Emily to know she had family who loved her, even if Robert wouldn't allow direct contact. Judge Simmons leaned forward. Ms. Campbell, while this is certainly interesting, what bearing does it have on the current custody situation? Catherine opened her folder. I have documentation of Robert's history of depression dating back to his teens. Our father suffered from it too. Robert always refused treatment until now. She handed the papers to the judge. I also have statements from family friends who can attest to his struggles as a single parent. Martha watched in amazement as this stranger, this unexpected ally, methodically presented a case that neither vilified Robert nor minimized his challenges. I believe my brother needs this treatment program, Catherine concluded, and Emily needs stability and family connection while he gets help. Mrs. Wilson provides both. And where do you fit into this picture, Ms. Campbell? The judge asked. Catherine smiled. I've taken a 6-month leave of absence from my job. I've rented an apartment 15 minutes from here. I want to be part of Emily's life to help Mrs. Wilson and to support my brother's recovery. For the first time since entering Martha's home, Judge Simmons smiled. Well, it seems Emily has more family than we realized. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement as parents and guardians found seats for the spring concert. Martha arrived early, securing a spot in the third row with a perfect view of the stage. In the 3 weeks since Judge Simmons had granted her temporary custody, with Catherine providing additional support, Martha had thrown herself into Emily's life with devotion. Tonight marked a milestone, Emily's first public performance since coming to live with Martha. She would be singing with her class, a simple song about butterflies that she had practiced diligently every evening. Martha smoothed the program on her lap, unable to contain her pride. Catherine had promised to attend but was running late due to a work call. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the show would begin soon. Is this seat taken? A familiar voice caused Martha to look up. Robert stood in the aisle, looking healthier than she had seen him in years. The residential treatment program was clearly having positive effects. Robert, didn't know you'd be here, Martha whispered, genuinely surprised. His treatment facility was over an hour away. They granted me an evening pass for the concert, he explained, settling beside her. I wouldn't miss Emily's performance. Martha nodded, pleased for Emily's sake but uncertain how to navigate this unexpected development. Robert's twice-weekly supervised visits had been going well, according to the reports, but they had carefully maintained their distance from each other. How is she doing? Really? Robert asked, his voice low and tense. She's thriving, Martha assured him. Her skin is almost completely cleared. She's making friends, and her teacher says she's catching up quickly on her reading. Robert nodded, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his face, relief, gratitude, and something that looked almost like jealousy. She sounds happy. She misses you, Martha added gently. She keeps your photo by her bed. Before Robert could respond, the principal walked onto the stage to introduce the first class. Parents raised phones and cameras as kindergartners filed onto the risers. Emily among them in a yellow dress Martha had hemmed just yesterday. The children began their song, sweet voices filling the auditorium. Martha could see Emily scanning the audience anxiously. When she spotted Martha and Robert sitting together, her face lit up with surprise and joy. She waved discreetly, missing a line of the song but continuing with renewed enthusiasm. As applause filled the room after their performance, Martha turned to Robert with a smile. She was wonderful. She was, he agreed, wiping something suspicious from the corner of his eye. Thank you for making sure she could participate in this. The moment of connection was interrupted when Lynette Waters appeared beside them, her expression severe. Mr. Campbell, I wasn't informed you'd be attending tonight. Your visitation schedule is quite specific. Robert stiffened. I got proper clearance from Dr. Jensen. I have the paperwork right here. As Robert fumbled for the documents, Martha saw Emily approaching through the crowd, still in her performance dress, her face alight with excitement. Daddy, Grandma, did you see me? Did you hear me sing? She launched herself at Robert, who caught her in a tight hug. We saw you, sweetheart. You were amazing, he assured her, his voice thick with emotion. Martha watched as Emily chattered happily, bouncing between her father and grandmother, oblivious to the tension surrounding the adults. For a moment, they almost felt like a normal family celebrating a child's achievement. Then Lynette cleared her throat. Emily, dear, your class is gathering for photos. You should join them. Oh, can Daddy and Grandma come too? Emily asked innocently. Of course we can, Martha said quickly, shooting a warning glance at Lynette. This was neither the time nor place for bureaucratic interference. As they followed Emily toward her. Classmates, Robert whispered to Martha. Waters is trying to build a case against me. She thinks I'm not stable enough to regain custody, even after I complete the program. Martha's steps faltered. What? But the judge was clear. This was temporary while you got treatment. Apparently, Waters has other ideas, Robert murmured, his jaw tight with tension. And she's not the only one with concerns. The day of the final custody hearing arrived with ominous dark clouds gathering over Pine Hollow. Martha had barely slept, rehearsing in her mind all the positive developments of the past month. Emily's improved health and schoolwork, their strengthening bond, the support network they had built together with Catherine's help. You look like you could use this, Catherine said, handing Martha a cup of coffee as they waited outside the courtroom. Try not to worry. Everything's going to work. Out. Martha attempted a smile. I hope so. Emily was so excited about her science project yesterday, talking about presenting it at the school fair next month. I can't bear the thought of disrupting her life again. The courtroom doors opened, and they filed in. Robert was already seated with his attorney, looking nervous but composed in a crisp blue shirt Martha had never seen before. He nodded politely to them but kept his distance as the lawyers had advised. Judge Simmons called the court to order, and the proceedings began smoothly. Emily's therapist testified about her remarkable progress. The school counselor noted her improved academic performance, and Martha's doctor confirmed that despite her age, Martha was in excellent health and fully capable of caring for a child. Everything seemed to be proceeding in Martha's favor until Lynette Waters took the stand, her expression unnervingly confident. While Mrs. Wilson has certainly made efforts to accommodate Emily in her home, Waters stated, consulting her notes, there are concerning patterns that the court should consider. Martha tensed, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. We've received new information regarding Mrs. Wilson's relationship with her late daughter, Waters continued. Documentation that shows a history of estrangement and emotional neglect. Objection, Martha's lawyer called. This case is about Emily's current welfare, not ancient history. I'll allow it, Judge Simmons ruled. But get to the point quickly, Ms. Waters. Waters nodded and produced a folder. These are Caroline Campbell's therapy notes from the 3 years preceding her death. They paint a troubling picture of Mrs. Wilson as a mother, critical, emotionally distant, and unwilling to acknowledge her daughter's mental health struggles. Martha felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. Caroline had been in therapy? She hadn't known. Additionally, Waters continued relentlessly, we have testimony from a former neighbor indicating that Mrs. Wilson frequently criticized Caroline's parenting choices during Emily's infancy, creating significant stress in an already vulnerable new mother. Martha turned to look at Catherine, expecting support, only to find her staring intently at her lap, refusing to meet Martha's eyes. Catherine, Martha whispered, a horrible suspicion dawning. I'm sorry. Catherine murmured, still not looking up. Robert found Caroline's journals. He asked me to give them to Waters. I didn't want to, but he's my brother and he's Emily's father. The betrayal hit Martha like a physical blow. She had welcomed Catherine into her home, shared memories of Caroline, trusted her completely with Emily, all while Catherine had been feeding information to Waters and Robert. As the hearing continued around her, Martha sat in stunned silence, watching as the carefully constructed future she had envisioned for Emily seemed to crumble before her eyes. The rain pounded mercilessly against the windows of Martha's cottage, mirroring the storm raging within her heart. 3 days had passed since the devastating hearing, and she had barely left her bedroom. Plates of food left by concerned neighbors sat untouched on her kitchen counter. Judge Simmons had ordered a 2-week recess to review the new evidence and Caroline's journals. 2 weeks of uncertainty. 2 weeks of imagining life without Emily, who remained in Martha's care for now but seemed to sense the precarious nature of their arrangement. Grandma? Emily's small voice called from the hallway. Are you awake? Martha quickly wiped her eyes and sat up in bed. Come in, sweetheart. Emily appeared in the doorway, clutching the well-worn fairy tale book to her chest. Though Martha had tried to shield her from the tension, children had an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong. Can we read a story? The one about the old woman who found a star? Of course. Martha patted the bed beside her, summoning a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As Emily settled against her side, Martha began reading, her voice growing steadier with each word. The familiar tale of an elderly woman who discovered a fallen star in her garden and nursed it back to health had always been Caroline's favorite. Grandma, Emily interrupted softly, are you sad because of the meeting at the courthouse? Martha hesitated, unsure how to explain the complexities of custody battles to a 6-year-old. Yes, dear. Grown-up things can be complicated sometimes. Is it because Daddy wants me to live with him again? And Aunt Catherine said you and Mommy used to fight? Martha's heart constricted. So Emily had overheard more than she'd realized. Your daddy loves you very much, Martha said carefully. And yes, your mommy and I didn't always agree on things. All families have disagreements sometimes. Emily nodded solemnly. Daddy told me that when he and Mommy fought, it didn't mean they didn't love each other. Just that people get mad sometimes. That's very true, Martha whispered, marveling at the wisdom from one so young. I found something, Emily continued, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. It was in the back of this book. I think it's Mommy's writing. Martha's hands trembled as she unfolded the yellowed notebook page. Caroline's familiar handwriting flowed across it, a letter never sent, tucked into a childhood book for safekeeping or perhaps forgotten. Dear Mom, it began, I'm trying to find the words to bridge this distance between us. Emily deserves to know her grandmother, to hear your stories and feel your love the way I did growing up. Despite our differences, you were always there when it truly mattered. I hope someday we can find our way back to each other. All my love, Caroline. Tears spilled down Martha's cheeks as the weight of regret and renewed grief crashed over her. Caroline had wanted reconciliation. She had recognized the love beneath their conflicts. Mommy wrote that to you? Emily asked, touching the paper gently. Yes, Martha managed, pulling Emily close. Your mommy was very wise and very kind, just like you. That night, after tucking Emily into bed, Martha sat at her kitchen table with a determined expression. Caroline's last wish had been for her daughter to know her grandmother's love. Martha would not fail her again. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she'd never thought she'd call voluntarily. "Robert, it's Martha. We need to talk. Not as opponents, but as two people who loved Caroline and who love Emily. There has to be a better way than this." The Pine Hollow Community Center hummed with nervous energy as Martha and Robert sat side by side, waiting for their mediation session to begin. After their late-night phone call, they had agreed to try a different approach, one that put Emily's needs above their personal grievances. "Thank you for coming," Martha said softly, smoothing her best dress with trembling hands. Robert nodded, looking equally anxious but determined. For Emily. The mediator, Dr. Patricia Levine, entered with a warm smile and files tucked under her arm. "I'm pleased you've both chosen this path," she began. "It takes courage to step away from adversarial proceedings." For the next 2 hours, Martha and Robert spoke honestly about their hopes and fears. There were difficult moments, tears when discussing Caroline, tension when revisiting past hurts, but also unexpected breakthroughs. "What matters most," Martha finally said, "is that Emily knows she's loved by all of her family, that she doesn't lose anyone else." Judge Simmons arrived for the final portion of the session, surprised but visibly impressed by the joint proposal Martha and Robert presented. Shared custody, with Emily living primarily with Martha until Robert completed his treatment program and established a stable home, then transitioning to more equal time between both households. Most surprisingly, Catherine appeared, having been summoned by Robert. She approached Martha with eyes downcast. "I betrayed your trust," she admitted. "I was wrong and I'm deeply sorry." Martha studied the younger woman's face, recognizing genuine remorse. "We all made mistakes," she replied. "Caroline would want us to forgive each other." As they left the community center together, Emily came running from the library next door where she had been waiting with Clarence. Seeing her 3 caregivers walking together, she broke into a radiant smile that healed something broken in all of them. Butterflies danced among the flowers in Martha's garden, now flourishing under the care of 2 dedicated gardeners. 6 months had passed since the mediation, bringing changes no one could have predicted. "Grandma, look!" Emily called, carefully holding up a jar where a monarch butterfly had just emerged from its chrysalis. "Its wings are still wet." Martha smiled, setting down her watering can to admire the miracle. "That's the one we watched form its chrysalis last week. Remember how you drew pictures of each stage?" Emily nodded proudly. "For my science project, Mrs. Thompson said I might win first prize." From the porch steps, Robert watched them with a content expression. His treatment program had been successful, and he now lived in a small house just 10 minutes away, working at the local hardware store. The 3 of them had settled into a rhythm of shared family dinners, weekend outings, and school events attended together. "The cookies are ready," Catherine called from inside the cottage. She visited regularly, having extended her leave of absence indefinitely after finding a remote position that allowed her to stay in Pine Hollow. As they gathered around the kitchen table, Martha, Emily, Robert, and Catherine, the true meaning of Emily's innocent 911 call months ago became clear. When she had said Daddy said it was love, she'd been referring to her father's words when applying the ineffective home remedies to her painful skin condition. Being strong when it hurts had been Robert's way of explaining why they couldn't afford proper medical care, not understanding how his pride was affecting his daughter. What began as a desperate call for help had ultimately healed more than Emily's skin. It had mended a family fractured by grief, misunderstanding, and silence. As Emily blew out the candles on her 7th birthday cake, surrounded by all the people who loved her, Martha caught Robert's eye across the table. No words were needed. They had found their way through darkness to create something beautiful. A family bound not by perfection, but by forgiveness and the courage to begin again. Emily looked up from her cake with Caroline's smile. "Make a wish, everybody. Grandma says wishes come true if you believe hard enough." Martha placed her hand over her heart where she kept Caroline's unsent letter. "Some wishes did come true," she reflected. Just not always in the ways we expect.